Good afternoon, everybody. The sun is shining here in the UK. Everyone is happy-ish because we still live in the UK, so we're not necessarily going to be too excited about who we are and where we live because we're British and that's what we do. So good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are joining from in the world today. If you are in chat, just give us a big hello. Let us know where you're coming from. And it's Freeformers Unplugged with a slightly different episode today. Hello, Emily. How are you?
You've been talking for 1 minute and 12 seconds before I got a word in edgeways there.
That's not true. There's a 10-second countdown, then the opening sting is 30 seconds. So take a good 40 seconds off that, I think.
Okay. Not doing the mental maths right now. I think it's 22. No. I can't remember what I said. Oh, live maths, not what people are tuning in
Good.
for.
You took me down really good there. Well done.
That's what I'm about. Yeah, I'm good. I'm very good. How are you doing?
I'm good. Have we spoken today? I don't think we've spoken. This is
No.
like the first time we've spoken today. We just like jumped straight into work. So yeah, all good. We'll probably catch up after this. So we're going to do a slightly different episode today. At your request and ideation, you came up with the idea that we should do something. We're going back in time a little bit because we did do this a while ago and we haven't done it for a while and we haven't actually used the cards for a while. So out of the Freeformers vaults from 2004, summer 2004, we've got the what if conversation cards.
You mean 2024, not 2004?
Did I say 2004?
Yeah, you did.
Wow. Really going back in time. Yeah, from 2024, summer 2024, we got the Freeformers what if cards. Emily, what are the Freeformers what if cards?
Conversation starters for forward-thinking HR teams / business leaders, depending on who you are and which edition you have. Essentially, the idea came from those conversation cards that were like really advertised quite a lot. Maybe they still are at the beginning of 2024 as a way of because we've all lost the art of talking to each other for couples, for families, and we thought, why not for workplaces? And so we did that. We developed a pack of cards, and my favorite is the little card that you can turn into a paper aeroplane and throw at somebody and say, let's have a chat. And that's what they're supposed to do, just designed to give you that little headspace, that 5 minutes, something to talk about while you're waiting for a coffee when you're in the office, or, instead of small chat or an icebreaker in a team meeting.
That's the paper airplane one that you're talking about, right?
That is, yeah.
And then it's like, have no one to play with? Fold this into paper airplane and throw it at someone and start a conversation. I like that card as well. That's very good.
Not that I've never thrown it at someone, start a conversation. I'm not sure my husband would be particularly interested in engaging in the conversation with me.
I also don't have very many of these cards left now. So like what I don't want to do is I don't want to ruin that one because I can't show it off. So I don't know. It's like
you can do it if you want. I've got some packs left.
Okay. Well, maybe I'll do it while you're talking. So we are going to just have a 45-minute riff session, essentially. So if you're listening on podcast, I will read out what's on the cards. But if you are listening on Spotify, you can just open the app and have a look at the video stream. You can still see us on Spotify, even if you're listening to us as a native audio subscriber.
And audio participation encouraged as well. We'll be going through questions quite quickly. They're quite broad. They're quite varied. If you've got an answer, let us know.
Abso-flippin-lutely. Emily, which deck should we play? Because obviously we've got the Business Leaders Edition and the Human Resources Edition. Which one should we play with?
Business Leaders.
Everyone always goes for Business Leaders, unless.
Okay, fine. HR.
No, it's cool.
I don't mind.
Hang on, you said Business Leaders. I'm opening the HR one.
Well, then clearly that's a Freudian reaction. HR is what you really mean deep down.
Well, I've opened.
Open that one. Then.
I've opened the Business Leaders one. Big shout out to Mulkey, who designed these for us. They're very, very cool, very slick. Okay, so.
And where does Mulkey work?
Where does Mulkey is the graphic designer to end all graphic designers, Waza, as in WASSA. I'm rubbish at spelling at the best of times. Don't put me on the spot. So we'll get rid of these three cards. And just to note that these cards are available to purchase from ourselves. But what we kind of got like the Joker cards, right? So we got the instruction card. We don't need that. We've got a description about mutual lifetime value. We don't need that. Can you see them flying off in the background? And the paper airplane one, I'm not going to fold it up. I'm going to throw it away because we don't need that. Okay, so we have all of the cards. As you can imagine, we've just got rid of 3. So there's 49 left. Each deck comes packed with 49 conversation starters. I'll do what I used to do. I'm going to flick through it. Emily, you say stop. We're going to be hard to drive the conversation. Are you ready?
Pick a good one.
Well, you're the picking one.
Okay, I'm telling myself. Pick
I'm
a good one.
I'm going.
Stop.
Okay. Ooh, this is a good one. What if we didn't recruit based on work experience or success? Interesting. What if we didn't recruit on work experience? What would we do? I'm just trying to think now because we talk about like who would be the next person that joined us, and if we didn't hire on experience, what would we need? Well, we did a pod about, or a live stream about skills based organizations. And I suppose if you want to become a skills based organization, I'm not saying you have to throw experience out the window, but it doesn't become like the primary thing that you're looking for.
No, I mean, I think there's a lot of you're kind of maybe looking for aptitude. So a lot of people do, or personality type fits. I think there's an issue with that because we talked about last week, like you end up hiring people who are like you. So I think you really got to be very clear on what you're looking for in a person in terms of their skill. I think experience has its place, but I don't think it's the be all and end all. Certainly there's a trend, and I'm going to go to the learning world, because obviously that's where I was before we started Freeformers. I was in a place where I was like, okay, actually I've been freelancer for a while, maybe I need a little bit more stability, I'm a bit isolated working by myself, actually I'm going to look for a job again. Just before we started talking, and it was really hard to find a job in that if you have different experience, you're a little bit more forward thinking, you don't have the very sequential logical this is what's expected, then it can actually become really hard to find a job because people are like, I don't understand you and I don't know where you fit. So your experience definitely can become an issue. And I know I'm not the only person who works in the learning or tangentially learning related world who has this issue. We've spoken to a couple of people we know who are in the same boat. Just because we don't fit into a nice path, I've got so many extra skills. So I think you're right. It's going to have to be on a skills-based approach, but it takes a lot of imagination to break free of I expect someone who has CIPD qualification X, and I expect someone who's done this particular role in this type of organization, and then this role for 3 years, and then this role, which is what a lot of people still expect you to have.
And someone we spoke to a couple of weeks ago has that exact problem. I think you kind of just referenced it, right? That they are going through their CIPD qualification, but also struggling to find the right job for what they want to do or what they're really good at, because most organizations are hiring in the here and now and the known universe. And therefore, the role that most of us, if we're really concerned with having impact, the roles we want to do probably don't exist, because that's such a movable thing at the moment. But I go back to the qualifications and accreditations and certifications route. To do what it says on this card, right? That not to hire on work experience. The massive challenge, the systemic challenge you have to fight against is the CV. Like the whole, and I know that kind of LinkedIn kind of does some skill stuff in there, but probably not enough, because it's still experience forward. A CV is experience forward. There isn't. It's kind of binary, right? It's kind of like, well, it's not binary. What's it? Like quantitative data. That it's like there you were here at these times, and this is where you were, and this is what you did. Like it's kind of matter of fact. Whereas skills is like, I've got loads of skills on my CV, but how would you ever quantify those to then hire someone that might be any good?
It is hard. I've seen some processes where they do kind of you have some questions to answer first, and you can like basically just riff. And might be harder now that everybody is using ChatGPT,
Mm,
maybe, but like you kind of just you answer some questions first of all, which kind of talks about your like your way of working and your way of thinking, or anything that's really relevant to the job description, and then the CV comes afterwards. It's supposed to be more of like a you know a blind hiring type thing that you don't know anything about them, you can't make any inference about their age based on when they did their education and or like where they're from and that kind of thing, which you often can tell even if you it's not explicit. So I've seen that done before. I read a post on LinkedIn this morning, because I actually went on LinkedIn this morning, about somebody who's like, oh, we just do a video, and if you don't do a video, and then we look at your CV after you've done your video. They said it works in the countries they hire in rather than the UK. It was interesting. They said in the UK they get a 5 to 10% response rate from people invited to video, whereas in other countries it's like 40. I was like, that's pretty crap. I feel, even if 40 is your high bar, 40% of people you ask to go for an interview go for an interview, go submit a video. Seems pretty rubbish. Um, isn't it? It's a very interesting one. But I also think the problem with how we would probably hire, and I don't think it's a problem necessarily when you're so small, is that it's going to be you're having a conversation and you shape a role around a person based on who you
mm.
know. And I think that works for small businesses because they're such key hires, but it doesn't work for big businesses, and that's how you end up excluding people.
Totally. Think having had experience of recruiting using a video-based platform, it's not everyone's comfort zone as well.
Yeah.
So I think one applicant I remember like was actively miffed, distraught, depressed about the situation. They were expected to have a conversation with a camera because they weren't having a conversation with a person. It's like, oh, you don't have enough time for me to talk, spend 15 minutes to talk to me as a person. And this organization was pretty small. I'm talking single digits, right? Yet they still
Single
put that
digits,
process in. Yes,
fewer
yeah,
than 10 people.
yes. And so they put that process in. And to their credit, they did change it as a result of that feedback. But also, it's it's doing it at scale, like you say, is that if we wanted to hire someone, we would probably have a conversation with a number of people and craft the job role around them. Now, crafting around the job role around a person, I don't think is particularly difficult if you've got the autonomy to do it. But I think then having that at scale, like you say, is the issue. So, it is a tricky one. You almost need this, and I think someone talked about this because when blockchain was a massive buzzword, like they were saying, "Oh, well, you keep all your skills on the blockchain." I was like,
Oh,
well,
for God's sake.
this doesn't make any sense. Um,
Blockchain.
it's like let's take a technology and try and shove HR into it. But
Or
like this,
anything. The amount
well,
of learning, skills, accreditations, all of that should be on the blockchain circa 2016 when this was a huge thing.
yeah, but the element there is that it's not a techno. I was doing an interview the other day. It's like most of these problems aren't technology problems. The technology is there to enable something to happen, but the human understanding and measurement of skills and then conveying those to another human being to understand those implicitly is very difficult, and no one's figured out that challenge. So, regardless if you put it on the blockchain or just put it on a website or a Qualtrics form or whatever, doesn't really matter because you haven't really figured out the systemic issue of doing that. I think we've just discussed that we're not actually going to solve that on this call, but that is quite a tricky one. But I'd quite like, I think it's a better world, but it needs designing. Should we go again?
Yeah. You going to pick it this time or me?
Oh, okay, I'll pick this time. There. Ha! What if we were asked to present the latest P&L to the board in an hour? Our good friend Joe Bailey would have words about this one for sure. Well, if we're essentially we are the board, so that's fine. We've got to present the. Well, actually, here we go. If you were asked to present the P&L in the next hour, I think you could do it. If I was asked to present the P&L in the next hour, I would have to probably fudge my way through it. I think I could get. I've seen so many P&Ls now that I think I could do it, but I don't know what's on it at the moment, at this very moment in time, and I know
So
you
what's the
do.
purpose of this question?
Well, I think it's that, do you know? Do, like, as a HR person, as a people person, do you know what the P&L of your organization looks like, and are you able to understand it? Again, what Joe Bailey does is help people who don't have that kind of commercial and financial understanding get it, so they can do it. And I think Joe even did a webinar, right, on
Mm.
literally how do you
How do you read
describe
a
it?
balance sheet was the start.
Yeah, so it's really important, and I think some of the stuff that we've done in terms of our metrics and benchmarking relies on being able to interpret these documents. And even though I would consider myself quite commercially savvy, still took a while to like understand the language and be able to open one and read it and kind of go, oh, okay, I can kind of tell you what this company performance is like. I don't think an L&D or HR person has the ability to do that, broadly speaking. And I think that's a bit of a danger.
It's often gatekept, isn't it? Gatekept.
That's true.
The first place I worked properly, the ODI, Open Data Institute, every month or 2 weeks, can't remember, team meeting, but regularly, they shared the P&L with the whole company. I mean, we were like 60 at the peak, so not massive, but not small. And they shared the P&L. And I think most people got kind of bored and switched off. But I think it was really very forward thinking, very open. And the idea of saying, this is where we are, this is what's going on, and this is how the work that you do directly translates to this. And I think it was really important for that organization that had a bit of a tension between the mission it was trying to achieve and then the money making stuff, and these two things were pitted against each other, and then a lot of people were like, oh well, we're here doing good rather than we're here to make money, when actually the two things, and what they eventually got to very successfully, I have to say, is that the two things can be the same thing. You can do good and make money at the same time. Money's like, profit's not a dirty word. But the ops director there, or CFO, I can't actually remember her title, doesn't matter. The person in charge was very, very hot on getting everybody across the organization to know what was going on. And I think I took that for granted. I was like, this is just what people do. And I don't, I know that's not the case. And I think it's from there that kind of interest in how what I do relates to the success of the business really came about. And for me, it's really important as well. I mean, I don't know about you. How many rounds of redundancies have you been through? I think I've actually lost count. I think I've been through at least 6, or I've been present at a company for at least 6 rounds of redundancies. I've not been made redundant yet. I was going to say never, and I was like, never say never. You might fire me. Don't know if you can technically, but I think it's
Good
really,
question. I'm going to look that up now. Although we need to, not yet.
but coming back to the reality, like knowing how what you do and the decisions that you make affect the commercial success of your business, which is ultimately so important to the sustainability of the business and your role and all the crucial work that you're doing, or not crucial work, but the work that you're doing, I think is really important. I wish that more companies were open enough to the idea of doing that.
Well, I think it also depends on the department you're working in, right? Because to have that implicit link to how the company is working and performing, like everything you do, like the whole reason your department exists within a company, regardless of what it is to make the company perform. And so if you can't connect between what you do and how the company performs, well, then two things. Number one, redundancy. Like if you can't do that, when the chips are down and the economy's bad and I need to get rid of people, I'm going to look to the people that can't quantify their impact first to get rid of, because well, if you can't quantify it, I'm just going to assume you don't have one. And this is where HR struggles the most, because it's just seen as a cost center. It's like, I don't necessarily see the value that you're bringing over and above some really nice stories about how some people went on some training and they really loved it, and we avoided a tribunal by doing this. Like, you get to that stage and you're like, well, but has the company performed better as a result? And that's why we exist and what we're doing, right? Is that to link those two things is about creating a better world of work and understanding that if you create a better world of work, you create better performing companies. But that goes for finance, through marketing, through all the different departments, I think. And this is why people use sales. Everybody always goes, oh, here's an example, sales. because it is the most measurable part of an organization, because it is literally the revenue generating part of the organization. All of that stuff can't happen without all their support, but how do they support and what do they do to feed into that? If you can't measure that, then, like I say, I'm going to just assume you're not having impact, because I'm not going to spend the time to try and figure that out for you. It is your job. You should be able to do that to some extent. I can help you, certainly, but you should be able to know. You should know.
Well, you as a team leader or a manager should be able to support your team to do that. I'm not expecting all junior people who've, you know, been with the company 3 weeks to start being able to do that. But team leaders and heads of department, depending on how big your company is, you need to be putting processes in place so that you can demonstrate that impact across everybody, or certainly at a team level.
So maybe the question is, because the original thing was, what if we were asked to present the latest P&L to the board in an hour?
Fine. Absolutely fine.
The answer it'd be fine, but could you then quantify your part in that as well? I think is like the follow-up question. That could you quantify the value you're bringing to the P&L?
Yes.
You could. Yes, you could.
We could, because there's two of us. If you know what, I'm the one that does all the spreadsheets and does all of this, and I could quantify your positivity and your impact as well.
Oh, good.
You'll be pleased to know. But yeah, no, I appreciate that. For a lot of people, it's a big challenge.
But you can't avoid it, right? Like, you have to lean into your weaknesses and your areas for growth.
What I was going to say is, but I'm not sure that many other places I could have done that. I think when I worked at the ODI, not mine personally, but at a team level, I could have, and maybe I could have broken it. I probably then could have. We're talking, it's a few years ago now, though, so I don't remember the details. But anywhere else I've worked, I don't think I'd have been able to do that.
The one organization I have done it was at Curry's. And Curry's, the boss I worked under at the time, was ruthlessly commercial. So much so that our department was essentially a revenue. We could prove that we were a revenue generating L&D department in our own right, regardless of the performance of the business, like the increase in performance we generated in the business. We created mechanics that helped the company generate more revenue, which was pretty nuts, because I assumed like, oh, everyone's doing this. And it transpires that myself working there, I've not seen that since, and everybody else who's moved on that were in that team hasn't seen it since either, and therefore think the world is absolutely crazy, because it's like, how do we even prove that we're, you know, adding value to the business if we're not generating revenue or even linking it to impact? And I think at Curry's we had it absolutely locked down. Like, I could tell you how many tens of thousands, in some instances hundreds of thousands of pounds, that our department would help the commercial team make. So the stuff we designed empowered the commercial team to generate more revenue. I won't go into the ins and outs of how. And then we were able to link what we do to the performance of people in the organization and how much revenue they generated. So we doubled down on it. And I was, reflect on it now, extremely fortunate to be placed in that team so early in my L&D career, because I was like, had I not been exposed to that, I don't think we'd end up having the conversations that we have about how do you prove the impact, because it infuriates me to the point of insanity that it is such a blind spot for most organizations. Yet most people are willing to double down and talk about how important the theory and the psychology and the principles and the foundations and all these frameworks about what they do are so important, without demonstrating tangible business impact, which is ultimately, you are employed to make the business perform better. Every single person in the organization is pretty much there to do that. So you were talking about your experience and that the ODI as an example. I'll talk about Curry's as that one example, and then the other jobs I had since were hybrid consultancy and commercial roles. So I just kind of got shoehorned into having to sell and understand how the company works and how my role. But again, it's because it was sales, so it's very route one to be able to see that. But then you have to work through budgets and stuff like that, and that's the thing. Working with some consultants, I know that creating a budget for a project, whilst I find pretty easy now, and then I just double the project management because that's always the thing I miss, is that actually that is a real skill to do that. And when we've thrown in previous organizations budgets, like thrown it to a consultant, create a budget, they absolutely fell apart. But the only way to get to know that is by doing it more, I guess.
Or working with other people who have that front and center all the time. And that's why HR and finance is a beautiful combination when they're not at each other's throats.
Absolutely. Right.
Next question.
Let's go again. This is your turn, right? Flickety
Yep.
flick.
Wow, they are terrible reaction time there, Toby.
That's the internet's fault. What if we all loved working here? I love working here. I love working with you. I like what we're doing. I love what we're doing. But in the wider world of work,
what if everybody loved their job?
Here's an interesting take. If everybody loved their job, that was the normal state, then creating employee experiences would be so much harder because, like, there was no. There'd be the performance gap would be so the incremental performance gap that you could gain through a great employee experience would be so small.
You take away a big chunk of why we're here, definitely. I think the proving it element is still important, the demonstrating value. But yeah, if everybody loved working at their place of work. But would you normalize it? So, like there's a big thing about the 4-day week at the moment, about how everybody is, all the studies show that people are way less stressed and they're way happier and everybody loves it and it's brilliant. I'm not saying I disagree with this. I 100% think that's being proved, but I wonder how much of that is kind of like a novelty factor, and how much of if after 5 years or 10 years or even 50 years, like if it became completely normalized and everybody worked 4-day weeks, like most people do a 5-day as standard now, or not most people, but that's what's considered standard, I should say. And I just wonder if then you'd get the same, oh, I've only got a 3-day weekend. Oh, I'd really love to go down to 3 days and then 4 days weekend. I just wonder if that would happen. I wonder if there's an element of that. Here's a big, deep psychological question. Can people ever actually be happy, truly happy?
Wow. No, because there's always there's a really sad story about my favorite comedian. So my favorite comedian spent years and years aspiring to win the it was the Perrier Award at Edinburgh. I can't remember what it's called now, but essentially the big award at Edinburgh for your stand-up that year. His whole career was built towards getting that, to the point one of his ex-girlfriends recalls he used to practice the speech in the bath, like years before he eventually won it a couple of years ago. Even then, though, he was co-winner. 2 people won the award, which you can imagine if you spent your whole career if I spent my whole career aspiring to get that trophy and then I had to be co-winner, I'd still have to be motivated to then win it again. But ultimately, he got that award and then wasn't fulfilled or happy about it. So it's the true understanding of fulfillment and happiness in oneself. Like, it is defined intrinsically rather than extrinsically. So on a smaller scale, it requires, I imagine, quite a lot of coaching and maybe even therapy to really understand what makes an individual happy. Because I couldn't turn around and tell you what makes me happy. I just like working, but there has to be an end point, right? I can't work to this extent for the rest of my life, because my life would be pretty short and I wouldn't see friends or family that often. It's an interesting one. Well done with the huge today's big question.
Can people ever be really happy? I don't know. I'm not an expert. I think that's the kind of a This American Life type podcast where they probably already done it, but they have to really delve down and explore and speak to lots of different experts about what happiness is. Okay.
So in answer to the question, what if we all loved working here? Then naturally the performance of employees is kind of taken care of, because you'd be motivated to learn, develop, be curious, and all that kind of stuff. So that's quite interesting as a concept, though. I was just about to move on, but like, if your only function as a HR team was to make sure every employee loved working here, forget developing L&D content or leadership or doing any of that. If that was your MO and you were able to achieve it, which I don't think you could, but let's say you could achieve it, then would everything else just... everything else would just work itself out. Because startups don't have HR, L&D teams, don't have any framework for stuff, because everyone vibes off the startup nature that they just love it and get on with it. That then you run out of steam eventually.
Okay, so I think there's a few things to unpick there. The first thing being like what makes people happy. I think you're right. Like it's not, people think it's things like let's have a pool table, let's have dress down Friday, or there's beers in the fridge you can have at 5 o'clock on a Friday, or what have you, right? And it's not that. It's definitely not that. It's like being listened to and having barriers removed and making your work life as easy as possible. As easy, as fulfilling as possible, perhaps, so you're not stuck with all the like terrible admin stuff. Was going to give an example, not going to give an example of some frustrations I'm having today. Not going to do that.
Is it in Zero? Probably.
No, it's not.
Usually
But,
it is.
yeah, often, yeah. But so there's that element. But then I think also your question, you said if your sole MO was to make people happy, well, then you've got the wrong target you're heading for. If that's your North Star, you're going to ignore the commercial success of your business, aren't you? Like, if you just want to make people happy, you're going to give them things like the 4-day week, or, oh, yeah, of course you can all finish early, or of course we can all just like coast through, or what have you. I mean, I'm not saying that's what everybody needs to be happy. That definitely some people do. So you can't ignore the commercial success as well as the happiness. Well, I don't think happiness is the best indicator of a business at all, because happiness doesn't necessarily equal productivity.
We've talked about that before.
And engagement and actual fulfillment.
But we look at the conversation I think we had with Paula Brockwell on LinkedIn a couple of months ago in one of her posts with the quadrant that she had over there at the Employee Experience Project, but also our own data shows that there is that bell curve, right? Is that you can't create a business. There's no such thing as like the best employer. And there is, because if it is just the best employer, then you're like you say, you're sacrificing the commerciality. So it's like there is a balance between creating the best and the worst environment to people work in. Both of those two are commercially not really that viable. The middle point is the most viable place. So the question to go back is, what if we all loved working here? We'd actually probably not make much money.
And then we wouldn't be able to work, and then we'd be miserable because we wouldn't have a job.
So actually, it's not actually a good thing to make everyone love working there. And that's the hot take on this one. Is it my turn or your turn?
I see, your turn.
Okay. I can do this because I just react to my own self. Stop. Should I say stop? Okay. What if we aimed for a high net promoter score during the redundancy process? Yes. You just talked about you've been through the redundancy process 6 times. We're assuming here that we mean redundancy process. Maybe the wording is maybe consultation process, because you may.
Yeah, I've never actually been made redundant.
All
I've
right,
been through
show
consultation.
Off. That's like saying no one's ever broken up with me before. I've always broken up with them. I bet you're gonna say that's true as well.
No, that's not true.
Fair enough.
Oh, I was just thinking back over my.
No, you're just thinking about all your exes.
Yeah. It's not the point of what we're meant to be talking about.
Well, so the underlying principle behind, well, my belief, and I know Bob Williams has been on our live stream before and has commented that about what he does over there at Reflame, is that the whole process and policy of redundancy doesn't necessarily mean it has to be like an inherently bad a bad thing. I have personally reframed redundancy in my own head, having been through it. I've been through the process lots, but actually made redundant once. Is that it's a great thing? Like it's a great thing. Like you leave with 3 months worth of salary if it's a good, like in some instances. No.
Most, I don't think the majority of people, by majority I mean 50% or more, leave
depends
with 3 months of salary.
Depends how long you've worked there, right? Depends how long you work there. But this is the point, right? Is that there is a minimum requirement as part of the redundancy process to offer X. And given the choice most employers will choose the minimum.
Mm.
And when you choose the minimum, you piss people off because you're like, did I not work my ass off when I was here? Did I not give you everything? Did I underperform? And you're only now willing to give me the minimum as a result of the wider organization not performing, not necessarily me performing. That seems a really like an imbalance in the relationship to do that. But to go to one of the points we talk about is that because you don't measure post-employment value and advocacy, then you don't really know the value, the impact that that's having, because it's like out of sight, out of mind. So it's kind of fine. We'll offer the minimum because once they're off our books, they're off our books, and we don't care about them anymore or what
There's
impact
also
they
the
have
way
on
you
us.
treat people, right? Like sometimes I think that's the biggest thing. Like people have put a lot of effort into working for you,
Mm-hmm.
even if they have done the minimum that is required of them. You know, they're not people who are going above and beyond and are outstanding, because not everyone can be outstanding, and that's okay. They're still putting a lot of effort into your company.
Mm-hmm.
And it's important to value that and to recognize that and to have some element of empathy when you're going through a redundancy process or a consultation.
And that's why. Oh, this is interesting. So I'm just going through 3 different versions of the announcement of the consultation process that I've been through.
Aren't we all doing that right now?
Number one, some randomer from HR pops in and says, "This is the letter I have to read," and reads it. Someone I've never met before. That's shit
Yep.
because like that's incredibly impersonal.
E-
I've had
even even if you have met them before, because your team is quite small, like
yeah.
your company's quite small, it's still rubbish.
The second
And it's
one
rubbish for them as well, right? Because they've got to go through 60 or however many they've got to do, right? So they're drained, they're emotionally drained, and it's not like they are able to put that emotional empathy into it.
is that one. The second one was I had a leader do it, but they made it all about them. And they weren't even going through consultation. Like they made it all about them, and they did it with a group of 5 of us in one go as well. So that was pretty rubbish. That is like, I'll just read the letter to all 5 of you, and you're like, has no one given you any sort of guidance that how to talk to a human being? And then the third one is a leader had the conversation with me one on one. Wasn't really a surprise. Kind of knew it was coming, and it was a conversation, not a I'm going to deliver this letter and then you go away and sit at the pub and think about what you're going to do with the rest of your life, which happened in the other 2 situations. So is it about what makes it good and bad then, that process?
Someone's at the front door.
Someone is at the front door. Apologies, everybody. I'm going to stay here. I'll have a look on my phone, see who it is, whilst Emily comes up with an incredibly valid point.
I think it's empathy. I think it's remembering it's not about you, it's about the person that you're talking to, the person who's going through the consultation.
Yeah.
I think it's not making it personal, you know, even if they are underperforming, like that's not the point of it, right? Especially if it's a, you know, a whole redundancy process where it's other people. It's not personal, it's about the roles. Even if it might actually be about the person, it's not about the person. Um, there's empathy. There's ways of doing it that are not, you don't tell anybody it's happening, or you literally just pull people off the floor where they're working and then have a meeting with them and then nobody ever sees them again inside the place of work. It's not like that. We've been through that
We've
one.
both been in that one together. They were
um,
all they were all at the pub. Is the answer. The room they all got shipped off to was the pub while we all did work for the rest of the day.
yeah, some of
That
us
was a weird,
locked, some of
weird
us
day.
locked in a room doing client delivery and didn't even really know what was going on. Just basically had a whip being cracked at us locked in a room. That happened. Oh, some of the things we've been in. So that's not the right way of doing it either. Um, I really do think these things happen, and anyone who's been around a while knows these things happen. But I think it's empathy and understanding that, yeah, a job is just a job, but for a lot of people, the money is non-negotiable and it's a necessity for survival. And I think being aware of that and understanding that, and there's a lot of like self-worth tied up in your job, and losing your job is really hard, being made redundant is really hard. Empathy. Do you remember that video that made the rounds a couple of months back about that person that got fired like over Zoom with that
Mm.
person from HR? Do you remember the details of it? Because I don't really.
No.
Okay, that's a problem. I remember it was very impersonal, and they had the camera off, and I think they just talked at her and then just said, and like she videoed the whole thing, and then that was it. Basically, there was no personal touch, no empathy at all. I really do think I say that word a lot, don't we? But empathy is what makes all of these big work moments. It's what affects all of these big work moments and makes them quote unquote good or bad.
But if I think about the people I've managed in previous roles, I'd have had a good sense about if this was thrown at them, the kind of things that would be going through their head, because it was
Because
my
you know
job.
them. Yeah, there's that too.
So it's, for some people, it's the finances. For some people, it's the pride. Some people, it's a combination of both. There's a whole number of factors that it goes down to the empathy and personalization of that experience, and kind of going, well, look, we kind of have to make you redundant, but how can we make sure that the transition for you to wherever you go is as seamless and as painful as possible? That's
Painless.
ultimately, and sorry,
You said painful.
painful,
Painless.
painless, not more painful. Honestly, it feels like in some instances when, how can we make this more painful for you? But it's that element of like, just because there's a policy and there's a document doesn't mean you can't have empathy and
Mm.
go. And we do this for customers, right? Go above and beyond, surprise and delight. Like, all of a sudden, when it becomes the employee-employer relationship, we don't want to do that anymore. We want to deliver the bare minimum.
Some do. Some do, some don't. I think I'm very much drawn back to something that you said ages ago, about someone you care a lot for, someone you know, someone close to you who was on maternity leave and then got told whilst on maternity leave, not that they've been made redundant, but that the whole work situation was changing, and that instead of working remotely, they then had to come to the office. And I
Oh
remember
yes.
what you said was that the person who delivered the news wasn't thinking about their employee on maternity leave with, like, I don't know, 3-month-old baby or whatever. It was about them, and that they had to deliver this news, and they wanted to do it to get it off their chest so they didn't have to focus on it anymore. And I think it's the same. A lot of the time it's the same with these kind of bad news. You focus on you as the person delivering it because it's an uncomfortable conversation and you don't want to have it.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas actually it needs to be about the person who's hearing the news and thinking about what is the best way. And you're all right. If a leader does it, if you're a good leader, you know your people, you know how they're going to react, and you know you're more likely to know what they need, shall we say. Whereas if you're just having to do 300 in a day, I don't think that's physically possible, but whatever, large numbers in a week, like, you're just going to have all that empathy drained out of you and not know and not personalize it. So I think that's the difference.
Yeah. And to A/B test that and kind of go, if we did one or the other, what is the impact on the business as a result?
Mm.
And that's the other thing. Large consultancy firms tend to have alumni networks, but don't really measure them effectively. It's about being able to understand, well, is it worth it? Because ultimately, you might go into the metrics and go, you know what? If we treat people like garbage, or we treat them really well during redundancy, it has
Does it make a
zero
difference?
it has
Yeah.
zero impact on our business. So we may as well do the minimum.
Mm.
But hand on heart, I believe that hasn't been done. Most people just go, let's deliver the minimum. And talking about delivering the minimum, we commit to delivering at least 45 minutes of content on this live stream. And
And
we're
we've only
40.
done 44.5 minutes of content on this stream.
So, with a couple of minutes of wrap up, we're not going to do another card. Let's put it that way. Let's wrap up because, the cards that we've played with today are available to purchase. You can buy one, you can buy both, the business leaders or the HR leaders edition. Both have a different set of questions in, just depending on the audience. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed this live stream, because it just, me and Emily first played this deck of cards at King's Cross train station, and the first card we pulled out, I think we were talking about for half an hour, 45 minutes, and actually the conversation carried on for a couple of days post that as well, online. So using these cards just to inspire change and conversation in your workplace, and like, how might you do something, we found particularly powerful, and hopefully those people out there who've already bought these cards and started using them are finding those conversations powerful as well. Emily, Next week, we're not going to be here at this time.
No, we're
We're going to
not.
be there at a different time. So we're very fortunate that we're going to be at the British HR Awards in London. And they don't finish till about 4-ish, I think. So we're planning to go live whilst we're there at 4 with all the awesome people that we're there with. We've got people from Channel Assist, people from Securitas. We've got Emma Jamil. We've got Sam Eaton. We've got Molky, who designed the cards. I'll have you know. And Phoenix Group / 1J Esports are partners from last year who helped us design and deliver Leading with Influence. Got an awesome group of table, an awesome group of people around the table. So we'll just give you a little bit of insight. We'll go live very briefly. We won't do 45 minutes of showing us either delight or despair. Emily will be ambivalent. I will be the one that will have the very visceral emotional reaction to whether ourselves and our clients win any awards or not. But that's fine. I've committed to going live, so you get to see me happy or sad either way. So we'll be going live probably about 4 p.m. To give you all the insight and all the gossip from what we're doing there. Emily, are you excited for next Wednesday?
Yeah, I'm excited.
It's going to be
Definitely.
very cool.
It's going to be excellent.
There's over 400 people there. And me and Emma Jamil are doing a improv keynote. We're doing an improv keynote.
That's the bit I think I might be most excited about.
I was excited until I learned there was 400 people there. Although Emma this week has delivered a talk to 1,000 people. A stand-up set to 1,000 people, which is pretty nuts at LinkedIn's HQ. So got some big shoes to support. Phil? I don't know. But anyway.
You're an insole, is that what you're saying?
I'm Emma's insole, probably. I'm the wind beneath her wings. No, she's the wind beneath my wings. Anyway, analogies and whatever aside, we're going to get out of here. It's been lovely having you on board for Freeformers Unplugged, and we will catch you not this time, but this
next
week.